So firstly, I'd like to welcome Calum Davies from the Conservative Party to start. Thank you.
Well, hi there, and thank you for inviting me to represent the Welsh Conservatives this evening. We've got a very exciting environmental policy package going to this election, from a Clean Air Act and delivering 15,000 green jobs to a deposit return scheme for plastic bottles and ensuring all new housing developments are carbon neutral by 2026. We are delighted that COP26 is being held in the UK this year, and we reaffirm our commitment to deliver net zero carbon emissions by 2050. The Welsh Conservatives further believe that the UK Conservative government's 10-point plan will be crucial in the run-up to hosting the summit, where the UK will call for further global action. This will include producing enough offshore wind to power every home, investing in carbon capture technology, delivering cleaner nuclear energy, and ending the sale of new petrol and diesel cars and vans by 2030. We welcome the Prime Minister's pledge to cut carbon emissions by 78% compared to 1990 levels, and that will happen by 2035 and will become law by the end of June this year. COP26 is a great chance to lead the world by building relationships and agreeing a global plan to tackling climate change. A global plan not only because it's a global problem, but demands a global solution too. The approach we are taking is designed to be incremental in a way that is economically positive and gives time to introduce the changes properly and crucially with public support. The way some activists have behaved may be passionate, but are counterproductive to gaining the necessary public support to meet these shared goals. So while the Welsh Labour government have had years to address this now, even though declaring a climate emergency was relegated to any other business and cabinet discussions, it is great that the major parties and smaller parties like the Lib Dems and the Greens have ambitious environmental policy platforms. But I think the Conservatives are the right mix of ambition and realism to lead to achievable, workable results. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to hand over to Jackie Jones from the Labour Party.
Hello there, everyone. Thanks very much for inviting me, and it's wonderful to be with you. I'm on my phone, so I'm hoping the technology will last. I apologize if it goes off because the internet on the computer is just not working. I'm a Labour and Cooperative Party candidate for the Welsh elections in Preseli, Pembrokeshire, and that constituency is very rural, but also has some urban areas in it. And I think that's part of the theme, isn't it? Making sure that we've got climate actions appropriate for the areas. And that's one of the things that the Labour Party is advocating. So it's an internationalist party, so therefore COP26, the approach is in order to get cooperation across the board. The pollution doesn't have any borders. So climate change doesn't have any borders. So we have to work together, and certainly the Labour Party and the Cooperative Party, that's the main ethos of that. So how are we going to do it? Well, I didn't hear Biden's speech, but I heard that he has committed to today. Sorry, that's my dog going to bark in a minute in the background. Sorry about all these distractions. But I heard that he has reduced he has brought forward the targets to 2026, I believe. I might have heard it wrong, but somebody was telling me just as we were out canvassing. So I think that's a really good step forward if it is as they said, and we can work with that. Working with other nations is absolutely key. But when it comes, I haven't talked about the manifesto. I presume that they'll have a question about that yet when we speak later. But it isn't just about internationalism, it's also about locality, and it's making sure that our footprint is much, much smaller, and our manifesto is full of ideas and progress on having local supply chains, having local people gather together in communities in order to reduce the carbon footprint. We've also obviously introduced NVZs, nitrate vulnerable zones, all over Wales in order to help with the climate pollution here. So we're going to be bringing all of those things and lots more that hopefully we'll be talking about in the half hour that we've got to COP26. But for me, it's a cooperative approach, internationalist approach, having local locality at the very center, which might sound counterintuitive, but it's not actually. It's reducing the carbon footprint there. I don't know how much time I've got left, but that's...
No, that's perfect. Thank you. I will now be handing over to David Wilkins from the Liberal Democrats.
Hi, thank you very much for having me this evening. I'm a candidate up here in North Wales, Clwyd West, Colwyn Bay. I have a bit of a mix between sort of a bit of an urban feel and a bit of a rural feel. And sometimes the environment can feel like a competition between the two. The countryside can look at the city and say, look how polluting you are. And the developed city will look at the countryside and look at the farmers and blame them. We love to blame each other for creating environmental damage. And it's very interesting to hear what some of the other candidates have said already. Now, I'm really keen that we start to take a little bit more responsibility for our pollution. Jackie mentioned it, there is no border to this. And how much of our carbon emissions are we offsetting currently by shipping that work out to China? I think what's really, really important, if we're genuinely to change the direction we're heading in, is if we invest locally. And the Lib Dems have pledged to invest $1 billion a year to fight the climate emergency by building new jobs, developing sustainable technology, supply chains that work locally, creating local, similar sort of local hubs, the 20-minute neighborhoods, so that we can break the cycle of everyone needing to own a car. We can develop, or we pledge to pass a Green Homes Act so that houses can be built smarter, made more energy efficient. We can tackle some of the legacy developments that cause water runoff, leading to flooding as we respond to more and more extreme weather. And it's really important as well that we need to look after what we have locally. So let's take action to protect biodiversity, look after things like bees and insects in the amazing countryside we have here in Wales. So yes, that's what we do as Lib Dems. I can hear the bell somewhere.
Amazing, thank you. Yes, that bell is my new favourite thing. I will now be handing over to Grenville Ham from Plaid Cymru.
There we are. All right, can you hear me now? So I'm looking at it as what if Plaid were in government when the time COP26 starts? And I think if we were, we'd go along and the first thing we'd do is we'd be honest. And we'd be honest about how, despite having ample resources in Wales, we floundered. Honest about how in Wales the species is still in decline, and honest about the part as a developed nation that we have played in making so many people around the world vulnerable to this problem. And our approach is also going to be about following the science, and we'll remind every fellow nation that if we learn anything from the last 12 months is that we need to follow the science to avoid disaster. And the climate science is screaming at us now that it's time to put the pedal to the floor. Our main approach to COP and to combating the problem is to unlock the barriers we've got in here. We know that in Wales, the electricity grid has been full. Where I live, we've been unable to develop renewable energy schemes for over 7 years. And in a time of crisis, that is unacceptable. So we talk about Plaid Cymru's plans for Ynni Cymru, a state-owned renewable energy development agency, delivering the 21st century infrastructure that we need, as well as the jobs and funding research into these solutions that we can then send out to the rest of the world. And we're also clear that we want the destiny of Wales in Welsh hands. So we want to be like any normal country where we can borrow money to invest in the solutions, where we can create laws and we can make partnerships across the EU and our friends around the world. But also we want to show leadership. And that means enshrining net zero emissions by 2035. We want statutory targets to restore biodiversity and reconnect our ecosystems. And we want to ban all single-use plastics this year and to stop any waste from going to landfill by 2030. And again, on a human level, we want to reiterate our desire to be a nation of sanctuary for climate refugees. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll now be handing over to Clare Eno from Reform UK.
Hello, I'm a marine biologist and have spent my career advising governments on marine activities, right up to advising the United Nations as the UK representative on meetings on biodiversity. When I was your age, I was inspired to care for nature. So I followed my dream and studied marine biology at Swansea University. Working in marine conservation, I've really made a difference. So I'm delighted that you too can have your sights set at such a young age to help care for the environment. We in Reform UK recognise the need for young scientists and engineers, as well as activists and policymakers, to innovate and develop the technology to build and deliver a net zero carbon future. To help achieve Climate Cymru's mission, we believe everybody in Wales needs to play their part. Government needs to support communities to change how we travel, shop, and heat our homes. If more people now wish to work from home, then we'd support creating local hubs where people can still socially interact without the need to travel. The shift towards electric cars is a key feature of reducing the impact on the environment. To power and demand for electricity, we need to increase the amount that comes from renewable sources. So we at Reform UK look to harness the energy of the sea. Indeed, around Wales, we have some of the most powerful tides in the world. So in Reform UK's contract with the people of Wales, we pledge we will support and invest in tidal energy to make Wales a leader in tidal, in this technology. We'll work with local authorities to create an electric vehicle charging network, and will create a national forest for Wales with open access to all. So each of these actions will help ensure Wales plays a leading role in COP26 and beyond. And believe me, I've commented on the proposals for Wales and can assure you the future is bright. So vote Reform and we'll work with you to make it happen.
Thank you very much, Claire. And finally, last but not least, over to Amelia Womack from the Green Party. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Poppy, and thank you to everyone who's attending. I feel that I myself worked in the environment from a young age and has been passionate, but it's been the young generation today that has proven that I hate it when people say young people are the future, because you're the now, you're the present, and you're making change happen. So thank you for everyone involved in Climate Cymru, making sure that we're pushing for those vital reforms that we need. As the Green Party, we know that the best time to have put environmental policy in place was 30 years ago, especially when it comes to climate change. But the second best time is right here and right now. And this is why we need Greens for the first time to be elected into the Welsh Parliament. What we see across the country, where we have Greens represented in Northern Ireland, Scotland, London, in councils, in Westminster, is that Green scrutiny that is so vital and important to make sure that we're reducing our carbon emissions and restoring nature to protect us from the climate and ecological emergency while addressing inequalities in our communities at the same time. Looking forward to COP, this is what we do every day as Greens, is scrutinise the government and their inevitable greenwash, the UK government and the Welsh government and governments around the world. As the Greens, we work internationally with Greens in countries all around the world. And for COP, we've been bringing together our priorities, not just as political parties, but working with intersectional groups within them, ensuring that we're talking about how we address the climate emergency from the perspective of women, of Indigenous people, and many more. As Greens, we are at the heart of our policy is a Green New Deal, investing in tens of thousands of new jobs, renewable energy, public transport, the list goes on. This has been at the heart of our policies. Addressing climate change, the ecological emergency and inequality has been at the heart of our policies since our founding day. And as today is Earth Day, we know as Greens that Earth Day isn't just one day a year, it is every day. And by getting Greens in the Senedd, we can ensure that that happens.